Hello, I'm Candid Frank Sinishi of NLL Lacrosse Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now joining us is Johnny Moradian and, of course, our co-host Gary Groob. Johnny, the big question always is, we start with, why the stick? Why'd you pick it up?
Yeah, there's so many interesting stories. I suspect you've heard over the course of time with your interviews, and they're all very special. Mine was very special too. Where we grew up in St. Catharines, it was back then it was a big General Motors town, and we lived across from the factory, and my dad, God bless him, worked at the factory, and right behind the factory was the outdoor Haig Bowl, Haig, Haig, and it was on Haig Street. And, some of my buddies started playing, and I got my first stick, and I played for the Tecumsehs, which, you can't have your team named the Tecumsehs these days, but I've got the picture of my first team and all my teammates, and that was the start of it. I could just walk, 3 blocks around the corner, and it was open during the day, and you could just go hang out and play hit the post and do whatever you wanted to do. No supervision. that was the way it was.
Was that the best attraction to doing it because of the lack of supervision, or was there another quality of the game that made it?
Well, I think it's free play. Made it so much fun. You would just meet your buddies over there, and you'd have some fun, and your parents trusted that you could walk over there or ride your bike, and on the way back, and you just sort of fell in love with the game that way. I was probably the smallest kid on our team, so I never played much, my first year or so, because the coaches thought I didn't understand the game, and that I would get killed because I was so small. So it did take a couple of years for me to figure out that you just don't stand still. And once I figured that out, I was able to crack the lineup.
Now, let's talk about Junior A and still in St. Catharines. And you weren't playing for the St. Catharines, the Junior A team from 70-73.
Yeah.
Back in that era, now we're talking about a storied franchise even to this day. Let's talk just about the coaching and the team itself.
Well, back then it was a little different because Niagara-on-the-Lake had a really good, Junior B team. And then, there was a fracture, right? You had, the Spartans lacrosse organization, you had St. Catharines, you had Niagara-on-the-Lake. So the best players in our area, unlike now, weren't playing for the Junior A team. Mm-hmm. So, our biggest claim to fame, our biggest record, I think, was, we hold the record for the most goals Peterborough scored against us in the Junior A team. In a Junior A game, I think it was 28-4 or something. So, we struggled a fair bit, with wins, but at the end of the day, we're so glad that, right now, like the St. Catharines Junior A's have the Junior B's, and everybody's seemed to working, a lot better together than it was back then.
Right. Now you played both hockey and lacrosse, like most of us did, winter, summer.
Yeah.
It kept you busy.
Kept me very busy. Very busy. Yeah.
Now you excelled over in Ithaca in the field game as a captain, all-star attack man. Let's talk a little bit about that and drawing towards the field lacrosse game.
Yeah, I was very lucky and very, very blessed. I didn't really do very well in high school. Just school wasn't, elementary school. I mean, I failed grade 8. I mean, who fails grade 8, right? And then I, I never finished high school. I never completed high school, believe it or not. I was in, back then you had grade 13. You had to go and they would said, okay, you're going to university, so you go to 5-year program. You're not, so you go here. So I was a you're not. and I really didn't, I was in tech and I wasn't a tech guy. My dad didn't even have a car. Anyways, so I dropped out my senior year, the fourth year. And then I went to Niagara College in Welland, and Bobby Aloyan, God bless him, a good Armenian friend of ours who actually was a teacher at the high school I went to, Lakeport. By the way, that's where Neil Peart went. We were in grade 10 geography class together. And Bobby came and we were out in the pub in St. Catharines one night, and he said, "What the heck are you doing? Like what? Like, And he said, "I got to get you connected with the lacrosse coach at Ithaca." And he did. And I went for a visit, and I was at Niagara College, and he said, Bill Ware was the coach. He said, "If you get your grades up, I can get you here." And so for 2 years, I really worked my butt off at Niagara College, and thank heavens to Bobby, and went there and played hockey goalie, a walk-on in the hockey team, because I was pretty much recruited for lacrosse, and played hockey and played lacrosse there. And the interesting part about it, like, I never knew field lacrosse. I didn't play field lacrosse until then. Mike French was at Cornell at the time.
Yep.
We knew each other from Niagara. So Cornell's on one hill, Ithaca's on the other hill. So we used to hang around, together. And, it was very interesting because in the springtime in Ithaca, as you know, it's freezing cold.
Yep.
And you're outside and you're freezing cold. And from playing box in the summer, where you were like other end of the spectrum, sweating. So it took a little bit to get used to that. But I remember I had a lot of injuries during practices just because of the cold. And I knew the athletic training room was a lot warmer. So I would spend a lot of time in there.
It's a very cool idea, yes.
And then, that was it, and then, so I started in 73, transferred in from Niagara. They took a bunch of credits, and believe it or not, I came out as a teacher. And when I went back to St. Catharines, there were no teaching jobs. When I started teaching, I ended up with teaching at a high school where the principal, who was the vice principal at Lakeport, kicked me out of school, and he now hired me to teach. So it was bizarre, and I was teaching with teachers that had taught me. So that was pretty cool. And then that was it. Then, fell in love with the field game as well.
Well, you certainly took it and ran with it, because you were one of 3 Canadians playing field lacrosse out there at the time. You got onto the 74 Canadian team.
Yeah.
And more importantly, that miracle team of 78, Bobby Allen's team. And we've had a number of your teammates on as guests, and they're all talking about a bunch of box guys trying to learn the field game. Give me your take on that.
Well, it's really interesting because in 74, Mike and I were the only 2 players with field experience. And so Dr. Dave Locke, he used to run the Burnaby Lakers, Minnow Cup back in the day. Real great guy. He picked us up at the airport and he said, "Okay, guys, you got to tell me about this field lacrosse game." And so we said, well, we play attack, and here's what's going on. And we had 3 long sticks. And by the way, we used box sticks in 74. And we had box, like Skippy Chapman, our goalie, was standing in the 6 foot by 6 foot net with box pads on like this, and they were shooting over his head, right? And so we said, so we broke 2 of those long sticks because they were box sticks that were spliced. We broke 2 of them in training camp in Vancouver. Then one of the guys just broke the other one so we wouldn't have any because nobody wanted to use them. So when we went to the tournament, you went from defense to midi to attack off. That's how we played that one. Now, fast forward that 4 years later, Bobby Allen, Donnie Barry, the late Gus McCauley, they were our coaches. And then Wixie, who he passed away, NHL linesman, good buddies with the late Gus McCauley.
Ron Wicks.
He was our GM, Ron Wicks, great guy, just class guys. And what Bobby did is he said, okay, There were 6 of us, 7 that played field. So we played lacrosse, right? Like we played lacrosse, but we had Flintoff, who was a goalie at NC State.
Mm-hmm.
We had Stan. We had Hunts, God bless him, from Hopkins. They had won a national championship. Jimmy Calder, Hobart national championship. Frenchie, national championship. And so what Bobby did is he got a bunch of winners together, like the guys that have won championships, hard-nosed guys like Carm Collins,
right?
Wasp, John Grant. And I'll tell you, we lost in the first round to the U.S. 28-4. Now, 28-4. Richie Moran, God bless him, was the head coach of Cornell, and he was the head coach of the U.S. team at the time. They had a very good team. They had a great team. But guess what? We were all used to 4-7 series. So once the game, my perception, once the game was, out of whack, like you're not going to really do anything that's going to hurt yourself. So they just ran up the score. We were fine with that. So They didn't know what hit them. They didn't know what hit them when we played them. There was a lot of things aligned. It was a muck fest, and our guys just came up big, and Bobby was spectacular. Matter of fact, I'm flying up to Buffalo next Friday. It's Bobby Allen's 89th birthday on September 19th.
Wow.
So I'm going to go up and hang out a couple of days with him and his wife, Pat. They just had their 65th wedding anniversary, too. So we keep in touch, and I know he keeps in touch with a lot of the guys because when you win,
I see him around the Memorial Arena in Peterborough a lot in the summertime.
Yeah. So it was a great experience and a lot of life lessons. When I started working with kids and teams, I knew in my mind's eye, it's never over. It's never over, and if you believe it's never over, then it's never over.
Right. Now, you had a great accolade from St. Catharines, being the player of the decade of the 70s. That's a huge honor.
Yeah, well, you know what? I got some really good accolades, but what I found out over the years, guys, is they have an Armenian quota. They're allowed to have one Armenian in all those categories. So I'm in by default, right? I get it.
So what he's saying, translation, is there aren't enough Armenians around. So you're the quota.
And what's happening in Azerbaijan, there might be a few less with that scary situation.
Well, yes.
By the way, but yeah, with the guys like Mernsey, Toll, Doug Favell, who's a very good lacrosse player. I was
goalie for Toronto and Philadelphia.
When
flesh that out.
Yeah, Doug played junior A hockey for the Niagara Falls Flyers. And back then, obviously, growing up in St. Catharines Blackhawks versus, Niagara Falls Flyers was a big, big rivalry. You're only 7 miles away.
Right.
Yeah, but Dougie was a good junior A lacrosse player. He played for the junior A team, and I was the ball boy for that junior A team when he played, and he was a marvelous player. Couldn't play defense, but man, was he the first one out of the gate on the fast breaks and transition.
He had a decent career with the Philadelphia Wings also in '74.
He did
made him stop playing being the goalie for the Leafs.
Yeah.
Let's kind of move forward a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about your coaching. You move into coaching, and you're with Brock.
Yeah.
And you jump into the coaching situation there. What got you out of playing and into coaching, and how did that all form?
We started a senior team in St. Catharines. We called the Merchant A's back in the 80s. I think it was 84, 85, and I had stopped playing just because I was banged up a fair bit, over the years, just banged up from hockey and lacrosse, and I always wanted to coach. And then, Bobby Allen, when you think about people that help change your lives besides Bobby Aloyan, Bobby Allen, when I played in 78, obviously in 82, we had training camp in 81 to try out. Bobby called me up and said, you know what? My nickname's Gypsy, obviously. He said, Gypsy, I got some really bad news, for you. I hate to tell you this, but you didn't make the cut. And I went, oh, you know what? I was brokenhearted. And then he said, but I'd like for you to join the coaching staff. And I said, wow, you know what? That's a great honor. So that was like in 82, in 82. And that was when we had the World Games at Hopkins.
Right.
So I was one of the coaches on that team. So that was sort of when I started really coaching. And then I was coaching at high school when I started teaching in 86. That's when I sort of got back when I was teaching in St. Catharines.
Right.
But yeah, and I just really, when you have a mentor like Bobby Allen, who shares, he's a very, very player-centered coach. He's very, he loves the X and O's, but he also loves to let guys be creative and play. So that really got me excited about coaching.
Right. Now, fast forward a little bit, and we go into the National Lacrosse League. Well, the Mill League, actually, the Major Indoor Lacrosse League, and you wind up with Buffalo in a more executive role and forming that team in 92, because you were part of 92, 93, 96, that juggernaut of Bandits teams. Forming that team and being part of that, because that team was stacked right from the word go, and a couple little shrewd moves to get Tavares from Detroit and a few other things.
Big trade.
Yeah, it didn't seem at the time, but boy, oh boy, look at it now. And on top of that, Detroit was stacked at that time because they were coming off being a champion in 91. And here comes Buffalo, and they wound up winning in 92, which is probably the first time an expansion team would have done that. Let's just talk about the Bandits and their inaugural years and just the whole mill system and everything.
Well, I got to know Russ and Chris, Russ Klein and Chris Fritz, who started the league. French and I have always stayed very close. So, I would go to Philadelphia and watch them play and hang out and, drink beers with Russ and Chris after, and got to know them pretty good. And I was doing some scouting with the Pittsburgh team before that, because Haswell Franklin, a good buddy of mine, was the GM then. So I got to know the league. And when they said they wanted to put a team in Buffalo, they asked me if I was interested. And I said, yeah. Of course, I was really interested. It was a little bit of a tough time because I had taken a leave from teaching. I was teaching school at Kernahan Park in St. Catharines. And it was a turning point in my life where I was okay with teaching, but I wanted to go back to school. So I got accepted at Ithaca in the summer, and then of 92, it was 92 season, so it would have been 91. And then I went to summer school, and that's when they decided to put the Bandits in. And I was at Ithaca doing my master's degree at that point in 92. So I was traveling back from Ithaca to Buffalo, back and forth. But it was really interesting because I'm no genius. Like, if you're a border town and you get 12 Canadians and the other team gets 3, I'm no genius, but I know I'm going to have
a real good team.
Like, that was really a good, but then so did Detroit, right? Detroit did too. So we were, we're on the same, but some of the other teams obviously, didn't have that. And you know what? Credit to teams like Philly that won championships with all U.S. ball players predominantly. But, well, goaltending, obviously, as we know, the key. But we had goaltending. We had Ross Cowie, Bill Geary, and then we had Patty O'Toole after that. So we had great goaltending. And you only win championships if you've got great goaltending. We all know that. Absolutely. And we're very fortunate. And, the Knox family were very good. They were joint venture partners. So we had the luxury of being part of their family and open arms. And they treated us really, really well. And what we heard was the fact that, back when the Boston Bruins used to play against the Sabres, that was when they used to sell the most beer at the Old Odd, except when the Bandits were in town.
You also got 17,000 a game. Your average attendance was in and around 14 or 15,000, which teams would kill for that kind of attendance nowadays.
Yeah. And then we had Les, God bless him. He was going to be a player. He hadn't played in a while. We played junior together, grew up as friends. And then he was working out, trying to get in shape. And one day he just said, "Hey, we got to talk." He goes, "I can't do this. I can't do I can't play. I can't play." And I think he knew, he was a tough guy, and he knew that he would have to be a tough guy. And I think he goes, "I don't think I can be that tough guy. I don't think I could." So I said, "Listen, then would you like to join our coaching staff?" And he did. And then he became our head coach, and we had the best players. I mean, if you look at those teams, and you look at all the guys that were winners, right? That had won championships, very successful. We surrounded ourselves with guys like that. And look where they all are now, right?
So it's a who's who of general managers and coaches now.
Exactly.
Keenan, Hamley, the Kilgore, Tavares, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah. So I think we were very good at leadership was really big with us. Leadership was really big. Character was really big. Obviously, skill was really big. But we were able to get some really good guys, and we had Kevin Alexander flying in from out west. We had we had some really, really class guys that became leaders now in the sport, and that's really nice to see.
Absolutely, and well, of course, indelible marks. It's still the longest winning streak, excuse me, in history with 22 games in a row. Still the only team I know that was undefeated with a 10-0 season in '93. You had 3 championships in your tenure there from '92 to '97. I would say that's a pretty indelible mark on the game itself, and a credit to you and the team, as well as the coaching staff. Remember, Buff McCready was your coach in that first year too, so I know more Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Buff was the coach, and then after 3 games we had to make a change there, and we put Les in as head coach, and it was an interesting story. Some people know it, some people don't, but we were going to Pittsburgh. We had lost 3 in a row. Guys weren't happy. I knew guys weren't happy. Guys were telling me they weren't happy. So I said to Les on the plane, I'm sitting beside Les. He was a scout, but he traveled with us. I had talked to Russ and Chris, because back then you could only have 3 coaches. And I said, I'd like to make a change. They said they supported it. And I said on the plane with Les, I said, "Les, if you were coaching tonight, what would you be doing? What would your lineup be?" And we talked. It was a short flight, obviously, Buffalo to Pittsburgh. And I said, well, I showed him my stuff. And I said, "We're pretty darn close, aren't we?" And I said, "Either I'm going to be coaching tonight or you're going to be coaching tonight. But one of us will be coaching tonight because we have to make a change here." And had a good meeting with him and Buff and myself and Peter Crawford, the other coach. And, Les went to the middle of the bench, and that's when it all started. Right.
Yeah, and the rest they say is history. But yeah, what a great turnaround, and the team took to Les right away too. So it was a fantastic move, and of course, Les later on in Toronto, which brings me to where we go here, is you jump on with the Toronto Rock with the Waters Group. And one of the interesting stories that you had told me years ago, I love this, and I wish you would tell it now, is first of all, at that time was the Ontario Raiders when they picked it up and moved it to Toronto, and they were the Toronto No Names.
Yes.
And you and Bill are on the phone with each other.
That's true.
Go ahead.
True story.
Fantastic.
True story. And we had the Raiders. We played in Philly. We beat Philly. We lost to the tiebreaker. So we didn't make the playoffs. I think we were 6-6, something like that. And the team was up for sale. And Bill put a group together. By the way, we bought the team for $250,000 back then. That was and by the way, everybody thought we overpaid. But and Bill put together a great ownership group with a bunch of guys. We all put in about $25,000, and so I think there was 20 of us as owners. Les was part owner, I was part owner, and so we're thinking of the name. There's a bunch of names, and Jimmy Calder, he was our marketing guy, and they had a bunch of like the Toronto Tornadoes, the Toronto Traffic. Bill was Bill's real. He was from Aurelia, so the Aurelia Terriers. I go, oh, Bill, nobody's gonna want to be a terrier. You know what I mean? I was driving down the Don Valley. I was thinking of names, and I'm listening to Q107.
The Rock.
And I look into Q107, and I go, oh my God. And I'm driving, when you can see the CN Tower, right? As you're driving, it was like this thing came, like it was like a spirit. Like I go, what is going on here? Like I go, the Toronto Rock, like rock and roll. Like, oh my God, Toronto's a rock city, rock and roll. So I call Bill. I go, Bill, I got the name, Bill. And Bill, he's big smart. Oh yeah, Johnny. He drops F-bomb. You got the effing name all right. Yeah, you're Johnny Meridian. You're like, I go, Bill, I got the name. I go, okay. I said, bear with me. I go, St. Louis. And he goes, Blues. I go, yeah. I go, Utah. He goes, Jazz. I go, Toronto. He goes, Jazz? And I go, no, Rock. Toronto Rock. He goes, that's a terrible name. Goes, well, I think I like it. That was it. And then we got Rob McDougall, God bless him.
Yes.
He's a great artist, and he took the tower and he put the air guitar on it. That only lasted the year the city of Toronto made us take it off. But it shows you how primitive it was at that point in time. I remember getting the jerseys and getting the crest, because Rob got the crest made. And like Les's wife, and we're cutting the logo out of the big piece so that we can take it to the tailor to get the logo sewed on. You know what I mean? Now it's totally different, but you're on a bit of a shoestring budget back then. But you know what? We sold out the gardens. We started out slow. The OLA did a marvelous job by supporting us, and we went to the OLA convention that year right before. It was a quick turnaround, and we had I forget, maybe there was 200 balloons or something, and we had buy one get one free, 2 tickets. We had a bunch of things that put in there,
right?
And the fundraiser was you paid $5, you got a balloon, you popped the balloon, but whatever you popped you had to buy, right? Now there was some free, but what we did is it averaged out. So the most expensive ticket were all lower bowl seats, and they were only $20 for the golds. So we thought we did a smart move by not having different prices. It was the same price in the lower bowl, first come first serve, and it worked out really well. That was Jimmy Calder's idea. He was brilliant, by the way. And so we had a bunch of season tickets, and our sponsors, we gave a lot of season tickets, and I think our season ticket base was maybe 2,500 with sponsor tickets and purchase tickets. Right. And then when you're winning, hey, you know what? The roof came off of that place. I mean, it came off.
Yeah, and smart idea, of course, was putting it on TV, so word got out.
Yeah,
something the league is trying to finally figure out now again.
Yeah, and that was something we committed to back then. And this is all. Bill had great relationships with Joe and CTV, and the power of CTV. That when the Leafs games were on, when Joe Bowen was doing a Leafs game, we were in the offices, and they first put in the commercial. They put the Toronto Rock is coming logo. Dial this number. The phone started ringing in the office when we're watching the game. And it shows you the power of TV. Yep. So we were convinced. Now it cost us $25,000 a game for TV. We had to pay for the production, but we got the airtime free. So we had to pay for the production and the hosts and that kind of stuff. And with the playoff games, I think we ended up there was 8 games I think on TV. So that was a pretty big budget. back then,
Sure.
a couple $100,000. But yeah, it worked out well.
Well, yeah, you're talking about selling out Maple Leaf Gardens. You're also talking about selling out Air Canada Center at that time when you moved over there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course, it was huge.
For-
The bump in the road happened around 2006. Things had changed. You just won the fifth championship, and all of a sudden things are changing. The lineup's changing over. The team's not doing as well. TV is starting to not be there, and attendance is starting to dwindle a little bit.
Mismanagement,
Right.
big time mismanagement. And, it was terrible to watch because we were shareholders still,
Mhm.
but we didn't have a say in anything. And the ticket prices started going up. How can you fire Derek Keenan? Okay, you fire Derek Keenan and you fire Eddie
Jim
Como, and then you bring in Terry. God bless Terry. Well, he wins a championship. Well, he's got
Mhm.
the team. I mean, come on,
Yep.
So there was a bunch of stuff that got really messed up because of poor management. I mean, I got fired in Ottawa by the same management. Fired in Ottawa. Why would I get fired in Ottawa? So he had a big idea of what sport would be, and he was firing people. By the way, destroyed an Ottawa franchise, a Toronto franchise, a Montreal franchise, and a football franchise. Like, that's a pretty scary record.
Yeah.
That that you destroy those franchises, and you had a beautiful franchise, in front of you. But you know what? That's what happens when people that don't know what's going on think they know what's going on.
Right.
That's why it's important, like in the NLL and any other league, that deciding on who the owners are is more than the money they're willing to fork over.
You have to have smart owners, you have to have good owners, and they have to have an understanding of business as well. And I think we're getting some really good owners now. If you look at the ownership group in Vegas, you look at the NHL clubs. I mean, that's really, really important, and it's nice to see. There's still some franchises, obviously, that are struggling at the box office, and what I've learned over the years, if you're winning, if you're in the lacrosse operations and you're winning games, but maybe the fans aren't there, it's not as bad as when you're losing games and there's no fans. I mean, that's just the worst feeling in the world. And then of course when you go in and the music's loud and there's nobody there, it's just like, people attract people. As we know, people attract people.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, can we shift over a little bit, because I'm very curious about your work with the Canadian national team as its director. Uh, Box lacrosse and all that stuff is awesome. We know that, but tell
Yeah.
us about that experience.
Oh, that was, fantastic. My good buddy Stan Cockerton, when he was at the OLA and he was on, working with the World Lacrosse at the time, we always said, we should have box lacrosse, because, it's Canada's game. Okay. We're playing field, which is great. So it was really cool. He did, the lobbying, and we were able to get it as part of, international competition. So we started it. Jimmy Calder, Stan, and I pretty much started that groundwork. And then we had a Heritage Cup game that we played against the USA, and they spanked us. That was the first exhibition game. And then we started the actual championship in 2003, and we moved it around, right? We moved it. We had it in Oshawa. We had it in Toronto. Like we thought that would be a good idea to move it around, but it wasn't a very good idea. But we thought it would be a good idea.
What was the intention in your mind? What were you trying to achieve by doing that?
We just thought it would be, we would get, instead of having the lacrosse people have to travel to watch Canada play, we would take it to them so that they, to say, hey, we're coming to you. So you don't have to drive. You don't have to worry about accommodations. We're going to come to you. And so we thought that would work, but I don't think we did a very good job at it. I think, in all honesty, I think right now, the World Box Championship would be in a fantastic place if they moved it around. I mean, the last one in Langley, yeah, it was Langley,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
That was, hey, listen, I love Canada, but it was terrible, terrible venue for international lacrosse. They can't get fans to go watch a Mann Cup game there, and who's going to come and watch, a ton of games? They're not. I mean, they're not. So if
We're
I
in
was
Utica.
ever,
Next year, we're in Utica.
I know. I mean, I don't understand it, to tell you the truth, but I don't understand the CLA anyways. We had our outs with them, but so we started it, and we did a good job. Listen, we should win. There's no doubt we should win. You could have two teams, just like the USA could have two teams. But once again, you're picking character guys, leadership guys, those type of guys, and you've got to have, the coaching. We've got tons of great box coaches right now at high level. But it's got to get to a point where you look at major markets and you go, well, why wouldn't we bring an Iroquois Canada game to Saskatchewan? Right? I mean, that's where a game like that should be played. I'm just making that up, right? Or Canada versus USA in Buffalo. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And then you have a venue where you have some of the lesser important games going on, and then try and figure out, Iroquois USA, where should that be? Take the top 4 teams and try and put them somewhere that's in a very, very important place.
Right.
You've got 4 years to sell tickets. You got venues with season ticket bases. I don't understand it. That, to me, I don't understand it. So that's my, that's
what you're pointing at. I guess I don't know whether it's your intent, but what it sounds like you're pointing to promotion, right? And meeting it with opportunity, and the opportunity being a venue that has, you want to fish in a pond with fish in it.
You got it, Frank. So I think there has to be, and by the way, I think it's the same for the field. I mean, like, I love San Diego, but like San Diego, Canada, USA, and somewhere big would be like somewhere big. That's just me thinking of, I think the PLL has got it nailed on that stuff, right?
Well, they're the ones that travel. They sound like they took up your idea. It sounds a little bit like your idea, taking games and meeting the fans as opposed to having the fans drop by. So that system is in place now. We've talked with the guy that runs the league, right, Gary? And he's had some success. And the reason I wanted to ask that question, because I wanted to make the transition to give Gary time to ask a few more questions. The transition from, box lacrosse, field lacrosse, and then the sixes and the Olympics, with your international experience and your exposure to lacrosse across the board. How about your views on the Olympics and what they'll look like for the U.S., Canada, and other countries?
I think the sixes was probably the best invention for our sport right now. I think it's fantastic. We've started lacrosse this summer in Armenia, and we're playing sixes. We're not playing field. We're not going to play box. Sixes is the way to go for countries, I think, and for youth right now.
Because of venues, right? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but more to do with venues more than anything else.
Well, box you need venues. But I think from the Olympic standpoint, they don't want big teams, right? So a team of 12 is a lot easier to manage than teams of 25, 23.
Also, a lot of countries couldn't join because they don't have indoor box. So to put it on the field and make it work works best.
In a smaller field.
And a smaller group of guys, you can meet the standard a lot easier than it's like the more players they have to find, the less depth they have, and then it becomes less competitive.
Well, and you're absolutely right, Frank. And I also think that, despecializing our sport right now is really, really important because, put it this way. If I was on any other country right now in field lacrosse, I'd be lobbying every other country to change the face-off rules because you can't compete if you don't have a face-off guy in field. You can't compete. So why, that's what I love about sixes. There's no face-off guy. There's a 30-second shot clock. I love the fact that you're playing up and down, right? I could see that game evolving into the 6'3" gazelles, right? Surround yourself with 6'3", 6'4" gazelles because it's a lot easier for them to shoot on a big goal without a long stick, right? And I think that's going to be the fastest game we've ever seen right now. That's my personal view. And I really like it. I think they've got to figure out, goalies because, you're getting a lot of shots with not a lot of protection. And that would be the only thing that I think. But I like the idea if you miss the goal, then, hey, like if you don't know much about lacrosse and you watch a field lacrosse game, you really need to have a PhD. Why is this guy diving, to the end line? You know what I mean? Like, why is the guy stopping at this line and going like he can't run over? That was the crazy rule when I first learned. Feel like, why can't I go over the line? Like you stop, like it's like freeze tag. Oh, don't go over the line. You'll turn to stone if you go over that line. But we're really excited about Armenia lacrosse and the fact that they're sixes, and I think you're going to see a bunch of youth sixes organizations starting. I think you're going to see a lot of sixes club teams starting and tournaments. I think that's going to be big, I think.
Yeah. May I add also, it makes it easier for coaching and for teaching players because of the 6 is closer to 5 like you have in basketball. And there's this kind of mental symbiosis between basketball and lacrosse.
Very, very much so. Very much so. And I had a great conversation a couple of days ago. It's interesting you brought that up, Frank, with Rex Kalamian. He's the Armenian national basketball team head coach, and he's from California. He's the assistant coach with the Detroit Pistons now. He's been in the NBA for 30 odd years, and we were talking about that. The first time I've ever talked to him, but I want to introduce myself because we're sort of in the same space right now in Armenia. And we were talking about the similarities, and it's a lot easier, and you don't need to, count on Canadian box goalies. I'm just a firm believer on trying to even everything up the best you can. So, it's more competitive for everybody. I think at the end of the day, that's why I like six. Still, Canada's still going to be really good. U.S. is still going to be really good, but I think you're going to see countries like Japan, who now are doing really well in field, and some of these other countries. I think sixes, that Japanese team, like they're athletic. Big, strong, right? So I do love it.
Homegrown in that. So yeah, there's lots to draw from. The sixes is fantastic. When we had Mark Riccio on, CEO of USA Lacrosse, he was even going one step further with it, saying at the grassroots level, as opposed to field lacrosse, where if you're the unathletic kid, sort of the right fielder in baseball, and kind of just standing there because your friends are playing, and you just kind of hope the ball doesn't come to you. Yeah, you kind of lose these guys as a midfielder holding onto a stick, really not doing anything. Sixes, everybody's running around.
Oh yeah,
and they don't even know they're learning the game. So at the grassroots level, this is probably the best tool that they've come up with in years to keep people engaged.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of kids right now, and I hear the numbers, the box numbers are down in Canada. I hear that. I don't know the numbers. But there's a lot of kids that, back in the day, the hockey and lacrosse kids, that was a great combo for box. Now there's not as many hockey kids playing box because of hockey all year round, right?
24 hours, 7
Yeah,
days
so
a
you're
week.
losing those tough kids. And so a lot of kids just want to play a version of lacrosse and not have to worry about, getting cross-checked and equipment. You need a helmet and gloves. That's all you need. You don't need all that heavy stuff. So I don't know, maybe you know better about the box game in Canada, guys, than me right now. I don't really have a good handle on it.
Well, it's the NLL. The attendance is growing, but when you're looking at summer ball,
Yeah,
it's not a very good attended thing. You take a look
yeah,
at places of substance like Brooklyn,
yeah,
Brampton, and these places are drawing not a lot of people. So
yeah,
something
yeah.
needs to happen. The demographic has changed also. We have
Big time.
more
Yeah,
immigrants, so we have to find a way to introduce this game, and this is a really great way. Something quick, something eye catching, and if it's marketed, again, marketing, if it's marketed correctly, we can grab them right from the beginning and grow and have them grow with it.
yeah. And I was a big proponent years ago, and I still am. When I do box programs for kids, we play 4-on-4. We don't play 5-on-5 because it's too
Mhm.
complicated for those kids. So I'm a big proponent of 4-on-4 box for kids because I
Right.
think number one, you need less kids. Number two, to your point about sixes, everybody's playing, everybody plays offense, everybody plays defense, and you don't know. Like you look at a 10-year-old kid, you don't know what that kid's going to be like when he's 16.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he could be sprout up, he could be fast, you just don't know.
Right.
So I think that's
So learning curve's different for every child, right? Just like
big
in
time,
life,
big
right?
time. Yeah.
All right, I want to move a little bit forward since we're rapidly running out of time. Again, another show that just went by like this. Lacrosse Tough, this high performance training that you're involved in with Greg Shelley. Let's talk about that and what you're doing with it now.
Yeah, so we used to do a lot of high performance stuff. When I did my master's at Ithaca, it was I majored in high performance, and so we've always done a lot of that stuff with our teams over the years. Greg Shelley worked with us with some of the teams. He worked with us with Toronto back in the day and in Ottawa, and so we always stayed in touch. He was a professor at Ithaca for about 25 years. And then about 2 years ago, I started really thinking, I'm dealing with a bunch of teams, and I'm hearing that they really their mental game. We weren't prepared, and we've been losing games in the last minute. So I started doing some work with some individual players and my teams, and then I called Greg up and I said, you know what, Greg, I think there's a real need in the lacrosse landscape for a high performance program. And, you look at his credentials, right? I mean, he's fantastic. And he's the director of sports leadership and mental conditioning at Cornell now full time. And he still has this consulting business that's busy. So we got together and, he's got all these great modules and I've got the lacrosse. I know the lacrosse part of it. And it was really cool. So, we started working. We're working with Gator at Syracuse the last couple of years. Stanford University women's program. We worked last year with the German national women's team, and we've got a couple of other projects that we're working on. So it's a real high level program that, as we all know, gives coaches and players an opportunity to perform at their best and reach their potential. And Greg has these modules that are very, very applicable, which I really like. So yeah, it's really fun to do. You always learn when you work with a guy like, Greg Shelley. Every time he does a module, like I learned so much from him. He's a good man.
So cerebral tough is what we're talking about to be, that
Yeah,
edge. Everybody's
yeah. To
looking
be
for that
to,
edge, but if you can be
yeah,
mentally tough no matter what,
yeah, yeah.
that's the edge.
And to be resilient, right? Little things. When I coached a middle school team a couple of years ago, the big thing was for a player would throw a bad pass, and you go, "Oh, my bad, my bad." I go, guys, that's not cutting it, okay? Because if you say you're bad, you say you're bad. I said, if you throw the ball and it's a poor pass, that happens. in sport, there's errors of commission and errors of omission. If it's an error of omission, you got to go, next time I'll pass it better to you, Frank. That's what you got to say. And then your mind goes, next time I'll pass it better to you. So you're actually saying that to yourself instead of saying, my bad. And you know what? If you watch those kids, you watch their body language when they say my bad, they go like this, my bad, right? Drop their shoulders, their body language. If they say, Frank, next time I'll pass you a better pass, right? That's, so their mind is literal. So their mind is hearing, next time I'll pass you a better pass. Next time I'll pass you a better pass.
A positive reaction is something bad happening. Positive reaction is something happening bad.
Yeah. So there's, that's what's really, really cool about this program that we're working on. And, it's like, years ago, I remember this gal, she had a little girl, friend of mine, and the girl was picking her nose all the time. And she would say, don't pick your nose. Don't pick your nose. Well, the little girl, all she hears is pick your nose. So she's picking her nose. Her mother's saying, don't pick your nose, and she's picking her nose because she doesn't hear the don't. To say is, take your hand away from your nose. Take your hand away. Okay, take my hand away from my nose. I mean, those little things. And so what we're really excited about is we want to have some modules where we can work with coaches, like a coaching staff of 3 or 4 coaches, and give them the tools that they can use with their players.
Well, definitely, you've always been innovative. I even think back to the Philadelphia years where, having a U.S. team, why not have mostly U.S.-based players? And a no-brainer. It worked.
We really did that. And you know what? We were on the cusp. We lost to Rochester by 1 the first year in Rochester. They went on to win the championship. We lost to them in Rochester the next year by 2. I think 1 was an empty netter at the end. And then they went on to win. They won 3 in a row. But we were that close. Where we got screwed up was the World Field Lacrosse Championships were happening. And we had some guys that were injured, like Max Siebel. Paul was injured. Paul Rabel was injured. So some of the guys, like our core guys, said, we're going to take the NLL, season off. And, that hurt our team.
Garrett Cole also, he's part of the military, so he had to do his time too.
Yeah. We lost a lot of guys that way. So we went broke. We got broken really quick. But then the Canadian guys stayed and played, and Canada won the World Championship that year. So that was a good thing.
Right.
2014.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Johnny, for taking the time with us. My God, like I said, this went by like this.
Yeah.
Just walking through some of the old stories. I'm hoping to see you in Utica for the World Box next year.
Well, I got to be careful about that because when I went to my first year at Ithaca, I came home after the first week because we had no classes on Friday, and my dad and all his buddies, they used to drink at the Golden Pheasant Hotel right by GM. And I came back, they were sitting there 3:30 after work. I already had a couple pints. I come in, my dad goes, how's things at Attica? I go, no, not Attica, Ithaca. The next week I came back, how's things at Utica? I go, no, Ithaca. So it took everybody about 3 or 4. So I don't know whether I'm going to go to Utica or not.
Attica.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
All right.
Thank you, Johnny. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Okay. Frank, Gary, take care. Thanks
Take
for
care.
chatting. Okay, bye.
For Johnny Meridian, I'm candidate Frank Sinichi, and of course, Gary Group. Thanks for watching Lacrosse Talk, seen Thursdays at 4 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Lacrosse Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Hear it, read it, download it, and live it. And don't forget, candidate Frank Sinichi, 10:30 on YouTube. Oh, pick up a stick and stop fooling around.